Perth, Western Australia. August 15, 2020, midnight. The suburb lay cloaked in darkness with only an occasional flicker from street lights throwing faint glimmers onto the deserted road. A house on the outskirts remained silent and motionless. Yet inside there was a subdued disturbance. In the low glow of a solitary lamp, faint shadows moved along the walls, accompanied by elevated voices. It was not merely an argument. It was something deeper, something powerful and disking, almost primal in its ferocity. All of a sudden, a loud crash broke through the air, as though something heavy had struck the wall. Then came the unmistakable report of a gunshot. Time appeared to stand still. The silence that followed was overwhelming, filling the space like a dense fog. Outside the house, there was not a single soul in sight. No one saw the scene, yet the sharp crack of the firearm cut through the stillness of the night, as if cleaving it like a fragment of glass. A few minutes after the gunshot, Perth police received a frantic call to emergency services. A woman's voice, shaking and panicked, reported a shooting and said that someone had been hurt. "He's not moving. Oh my God. Help!" the woman cried, her voice breaking. The dispatcher promptly sent a patrol unit, and officers reached the scene within minutes. The flashing lights showed a woman standing on the front lawn, clearly shaken. She was pale, her eyes wide with terror, and her entire body trembled uncontrollably. Inside the house, disorder confronted the officers. In the living room lay the body of James Watson, 38 years old. His body was contorted in an unnatural position. His eyes wide open, and a dark pool of blood had started to spread across the floor. The blood seeped into the carpet, marking the furniture and walls. The officers quickly observed signs of a struggle. Chairs had been knocked over, and there were visible marks of impact on both the furniture and the walls. The whole room was in disarray, indicating a violent confrontation before the shot was fired. Beside the body lay a shotgun, its barrel aimed toward the door. At first glance, it appeared as though someone had broken into the house. Yet, there were no signs of forced entry. Officers sealed off the area and called for detectives and forensic teams to gather evidence. It was clear to them that this was not merely a random crime. There was something far more complex behind it. The woman they discovered on the lawn was identified as Catherine Watson, James's wife. She was in shock, and paramedics at the scene attempted to soothe her. Her hands were stained with blood, and she was too distressed to speak clearly. When she was taken to the police station, all she could say was, "I didn't mean to. I didn't know it would end like this." Investigators began their search for answers. The first step was questioning the neighbors, but no one had heard anything unusual before the gunshot. One neighbor, an elderly man named Mark Ridley, stated that he had seen Catherine and James returning home together that evening. They appeared tense, but he did not think much of it. Police recorded his statement, although It did not offer any significant leads. Meanwhile, forensic experts inside the house uncovered increasing evidence, indicating that the conflict had begun long before the gunshot. On the kitchen table, they discovered an open envelope. Inside were several documents and photographs. At first, they did not appear especially significant, but upon closer examination, the investigators noticed that some of the photos captured personal moments from the family's life. These images could possibly hold the key to understanding the motive behind the incident. Detectives worked to piece together the events of that evening. Around 8 p.m., Catherine and James returned home after a tense dinner at a restaurant. According to those who knew them, the dinner had been uncomfortable. But nothing had suggested the coming tragedy. At one point, James said that he needed to leave and take care of something, but Catherine insisted that he remain. She told him there was something they needed to discuss. When they returned home, Catherine suggested they unwind with a drink and spend the evening quietly. She left James in the living room and went upstairs, taking the envelope with her. James, apparently unaware of what was about to happen, remained downstairs. Catherine eventually came back down the stairs, gripping the documents tightly in her hands, her face without expression. She set the envelope on the table in front of him and stood there, waiting for his reaction. James saw the envelope and his expression shifted. He attempted to stay calm, but the tension in the room was unmistakable. Catherine did not say a word, yet the look in her eyes conveyed everything. A heavy silence lingered in the air. This was the moment when everything changed. A heated argument broke out between them, escalating rapidly into a shouting match. At one point, James attempted to seize the envelope, but Catherine clung to it, refusing to release the documents. As investigators examined the room where the shot had been fired, they found a broken chair that seemed to have been used as a weapon. Scattered across the floor were papers and photographs, some of which were marked with blood. All the evidence indicated a struggle over the documents between James and Catherine. Detectives determined that the shot was fired at the moment when James was attempting to take something from Catherine. It was evident from the marks on the carpet and the position of the shotgun that Catherine had pulled the trigger. When police examined James and Catherine's phones, they uncovered several intriguing details. James' phone had been switched off at 10:30 p.m., which was unusual given his typical behavior. Surveillance footage from a camera outside their house confirmed that James had left around that time, but returned only 10 minutes later. What he did during those few minutes remained a mystery. Catherine, still in shock when she was taken to the station, could not provide a clear explanation of what had occurred. According to her, they had begun arguing, and at some point, things had spiraled out of control. She stated that she did not remember how she ended up holding the shotgun. Detectives noted the strain she was clearly under, but they also sensed that there was more to her story. Investigators began examining the Watsons' relationship more closely. The couple had been married for 10 years, had no children, and outwardly seemed to lead a calm life. However, neighbors pointed out that James had been spending less time at home in recent months, which had aroused suspicions in Catherine. No one knew the exact nature of what was happening between them, but the tension in their interactions had not gone unnoticed by close friends and neighbors. The investigation also revealed that just a week before the incident, Catherine had contacted a private investigator. The reasons for this were unclear. Perhaps she had been gathering evidence against her husband, but exactly what she was investigating remained unknown. Later that evening, police received the results of the forensic analysis of the weapon found at the scene. James' fingerprints were discovered on the shotgun, but they appeared unusual, as though he had only handled it briefly. This led detectives to wonder, could someone else have used the weapon at the critical moment? The morning after the incident, Perth police returned to Catherine and James Watson's home. The crime scene remained sealed off, with forensic teams continuing to collect evidence while detectives worked to assemble a clearer picture of what had taken place. On the surface, it seemed to be a sudden burst of aggression during an argument, but the details cast doubt on the simplicity of this explanation. Detective Richard Hale, leading the investigation, decided to review the surveillance footage once more to ensure nothing had been missed. The footage showed James leaving the house at 10:30 p.m. and returning 10 minutes later, but there was a slight inconsistency between the frames. The video showed him speaking with someone in a car parked by the curb. The camera captured a shadowy figure, but the face of the person James was talking to could not be distinguished. Hale realized this might be a vital lead and began investigating who could have been outside the house at that moment. Meanwhile, detectives continued their second round of questioning with Catherine, but her mental state remained unstable. She maintained that she could not recall how things had escalated and claimed that everything had happened too quickly. Her words were disordered and her eyes seemed vacant. However, Detective Hale noticed a brief shift in her expression when he asked about the car seen in the surveillance footage, as if she were trying to conceal something. At the same time, investigators were carefully examining the contents of the envelope found at the scene. Inside were several photographs taken by a private investigator. The photos showed James with a young woman, but her face was always hidden. The report from the investigator described several places where they had met: a cafe in downtown Perth, a shopping mall parking lot, and a motel on the outskirts of the city. However, the woman's name was not mentioned in the report. Hale concluded that Catherine had hired the private investigator to follow her husband, but how these photographs were connected to the crime remained unclear. Investigators decided to visit the office of the private investigator mentioned in the report. They found him, a man named Thomas Morgan, who appeared somewhat uneasy when he saw the detectives. Morgan confirmed that Catherine had contacted him about 2 weeks earlier, saying that her husband had been acting suspiciously. She Suspected that he was being unfaithful, but did not provide many details. Morgan showed the detectives copies of the photos taken during a week of surveillance. The images clearly showed James meeting with the woman. Although her face was always concealed, she was either turning away or wearing a hood. Morgan stated that he had handed over all the collected material to Catherine just a day before the tragic event. Detective Hale returned to Catherine and showed her the photos taken by the private investigator. Her reaction remained without emotion, but she admitted that she had suspected James of being unfaithful. She said that she had intended to confront him with the evidence in a family discussion to learn the truth and decide the future of their marriage. However, she maintained that she had never meant to harm him. According to her, things had spiraled out of control when James saw the photos and accused her of spying on him. She claimed that the argument had turned into a physical struggle and eventually the fatal shot, but she could not remember exactly how it had happened. As detectives tried to determine whether Catherine's account was truthful, they received the forensic results on the fingerprints found on the shotgun. While James' prints were indeed present, forensic experts determined that they had been placed on the gun well before the shot was fired. Catherine had claimed that the gun was kept in the house for protection and insisted that she had never touched it. This statement contradicted the forensic findings, and investigators began to suspect that someone had interfered with the weapon in an attempt to mislead the police. The surveillance footage of James speaking with someone in a car became a crucial piece of evidence. Detective Hale sent a copy of the recording for further analysis, hoping to identify the car's license plate and determine who might have been outside the Watsons' home that evening. While waiting for the results, detectives reviewed Catherine and James' phone records, searching for additional clues. They discovered that on the night of the incident, Catherine had sent several text messages to her sister, Lisa. The content of the messages raised suspicions. They seemed like attempts to explain or justify something. One message read, "I didn't mean for it to happen this way." Another contained a request to meet. Lisa had not replied to these messages, which concerned Hale. He decided to bring her in for questioning to find out whether she knew anything about that night's events. When Lisa arrived at the station, she appeared tense. She confirmed that she had spoken with Catherine the day before, but not on the night of the incident. According to Lisa, they had discussed an upcoming family gathering. She claimed to know nothing about what had happened and said that she had been at home the entire evening. However, her nervous demeanor and hesitant answers raised concerns for the detectives. Hale decided to examine her phone records and location data to verify her alibi. While the questioning continued, investigators received the results from the analysis of the surveillance video. The license plate on the car parked outside the Watsons' house belonged to Lisa. This revelation intensified their suspicions, and Hale altered his approach during the interrogation, asking Lisa direct questions about her whereabouts that night. At first, she tried to offer excuses, but under pressure, she eventually admitted that she had been outside the house when James stepped out. Her explanation, however, was unclear. She said that she had come to speak with her sister, but chose to leave after seeing James without ever getting out of the car. Hale knew that something did not add up. He returned to examining Lisa's phone records and discovered that on the night of the incident, she had received a message from James urging her to come over immediately. But why would James contact Lisa when he was supposed to be with Catherine? And what could they have been discussing in private? Meanwhile, forensic experts uncovered another crucial piece of evidence. In the bedroom where Catherine said the argument had begun, they found traces of blood on the door handle that did not match Catherine or James. This led detectives to suspect that a third person had been present during the conflict. A DNA analysis confirmed that the blood belonged to Lisa. Now, investigators had proof that Lisa had been inside the house despite her earlier denials. The police confronted Lisa with the new evidence. She tried to defend herself, claiming that she had only come to protect Catherine. But when the argument between James and Catherine began, she panicked and tried to leave. She insisted that she had no involvement in the crime and did not know who had fired the shot. However, her story became increasingly complicated as the questioning continued. Detectives were beginning to suspect that Catherine and Lisa might be concealing something. They had a theory that James' possible affair could have triggered a conflict between the sisters. There were still too many unanswered questions. Hale decided to temporarily release Lisa, instructing her not to leave town. He sensed that they were close to solving the mystery. But one crucial piece of evidence was still missing to fully reveal the truth about that night. The next day, Detective Richard Hale and his team returned to the Watson home for a more detailed inspection. With each new clue, it became clear that this was not a simple crime. Hale felt that there was far more beneath the surface than just a family argument that had ended in tragedy. The police searched through every room again, looking for details that might provide more insight into the case. They carefully examined the photographs found in the envelope. The detectives believed that the private investigators' photos commissioned by Catherine were central to the motive. But the woman's face in the pictures remained blurred and concealed. This complicated the investigation as they could not definitively identify her. While the forensic team continued their work, Hale decided to bring Lisa in again for questioning. This time not as a witness, but as a possible suspect. Lisa appeared anxious but agreed to cooperate. Hale chose a more direct approach, presenting her with the results of the blood analysis found on the door handle. He asked why her blood had been discovered inside the house if she had claimed that she never left her car. Lisa once again tried to explain, but her answers were unconvincing. She suggested that she might have accidentally scratched herself while entering the house, but her story seemed weak. Hale realized that pressing Further would not be productive and decided to give her some time. Although he was certain that there was more to her story than she was revealing. Meanwhile, investigators analyzed Lisa and James' phone records. They found several messages that James had sent to Lisa just before his death. One text read, "Come over immediately," while another specified the location for a meeting. The messages carried an urgent, almost desperate tone, leading Hale to believe that James had sensed something serious was about to happen. He instructed his team to investigate their past interactions more deeply to determine whether there had been other similar meetings or communications. Detectives also began reviewing James' emails and social media accounts. They uncovered a series of messages between James and Lisa dating back several weeks. In these exchanges, James and Lisa discussed certain serious steps that needed to be taken soon. The messages suggested a plan, but the details remained unclear. Hale began to piece together that there was more to the relationship between James and Lisa than merely a family connection. As the investigation gained momentum, Catherine remained in a state of stress. Detectives decided to return to her for further questioning, hoping to clarify the events of that night. Hale started asking about her relationship with Lisa. But Catherine was reluctant to speak about her sister. She mentioned that they had once been close, but their relationship had deteriorated in recent months. Catherine did not go into detail, but suggested that conflicts had arisen within their family, not all of which involved James. Sensing an opportunity, Hale pressed further, asking whether Catherine knew that James had been meeting with Lisa. He showed her messages from James' phone, but her reaction remained unchanged. She claimed that she had no knowledge of these meetings and that her only suspicion was that James might have been unfaithful with another woman, but not with Lisa. At that moment, Hale realized that either Catherine truly knew nothing or she was deliberately concealing the truth. Shifting their focus, the detectives decided to investigate Lisa's home. They obtained a search warrant and went to her residence to gather more evidence. During the search, they found a notebook filled with notes about meetings and phone calls with James. The entries included names, dates, and addresses, one of which was Catherine and James' home. This confirmed that Lisa was not only aware of James' every movement, but might have been planning her visits. Hale began to suspect that Lisa played a central role in what had occurred. Further examination revealed a photograph in Lisa's house showing her and James together at the beach. The picture appeared to be recent and they looked very close. This became a crucial lead. Hale now realized that James and Lisa had a romantic relationship, one that Catherine either had not suspected or had deliberately ignored. Meanwhile, forensic experts completed their analysis of the shotgun. The results indicated that Lisa's fingerprints were indeed on the weapon, but they had been left after James' prints. This led detectives to believe that Lisa had handled the shotgun after James was already injured. Hale began to suspect that Lisa might have interfered with the crime scene to mislead the investigation. At the same time, investigators uncovered footage from a hotel where James and Lisa had met. The video showed them speaking, discussing something before Lisa left and James remained behind. Their behavior was intimate, providing further proof of a relationship that Catherine had been unaware of. This reinforced the theory that Lisa and James were involved in something deeper and that their secret connection had played a significant role in the events leading to that tragic night. Hale decided to act quickly. He summoned Lisa back to the station and this time presented her with the new evidence. Photos, videos, and fingerprints. Lisa tried to remain composed, but under pressure, she began to falter. She admitted that she had indeed been seeing James behind Catherine's back. She explained that their affair had begun over a year earlier, but she had never intended to ruin her sister's marriage. Everything had been kept secret until Catherine started suspecting James of infidelity and hired a private investigator. Hale pressed further, asking what Lisa and James had discussed that night. Lisa claimed that James had wanted to meet to talk about how best to confess the truth to Catherine, but things had quickly spiraled out of control. She confessed that she had come to the house, but had not intended to interfere. However, when she heard the shouting, she entered the house and saw Catherine and James struggling. According to her, she tried to stop them, but did not manage to do so in time. Detectives began verifying her story, but all the evidence indicated that Lisa had been inside the house at the time of the crime. Surveillance footage, blood analysis, and fingerprints all confirmed her presence. The question remained, was she directly involved in the confrontation, or merely a witness? But Hale was certain that she was concealing more than she was admitting. Meanwhile, investigators examined James and Lisa's financial records. They discovered that shortly before the incident, James had transferred a large sum of money to Lisa's account. It seemed like payment for something, but the reason behind it remained unclear. Hale began to suspect that Lisa was involved in a larger plan, perhaps even orchestrating the crime. Later that evening, detectives received a breakthrough from the forensic team. They had found a phone belonging to Lisa hidden beneath the mattress in Catherine and James' bedroom. When the detectives accessed the phone, they uncovered text messages that confirmed their suspicions. James and Lisa had been planning to stage an attack and frame Catherine for it. The messages discussed various details of the plan, but for some reason, things had not gone as intended. Hale realized that they now had enough evidence to arrest Lisa. He ordered her detention, and during a subsequent interrogation, Lisa, cornered, admitted that there had indeed been a plan. She claimed that James had threatened to expose her if she did not help him get rid of Catherine. However, she maintained that the shooting had been an accident and that she had never intended for events to go this far. Hale knew he was close to resolving the case. Yet, one crucial question remained. If Lisa and James had planned everything. Together, why had the plan unraveled and who had actually pulled the trigger? Detective Richard Hale felt that the pieces of the puzzle were finally fitting together. But one vital question still persisted. Who had truly pulled the trigger, and why had James and Lisa's plan failed? The collected evidence and Lisa's confession pointed toward a conspiracy. Yet, the complete details were still uncertain. In the interrogation room, Lisa continued to insist that she had played no role in the crime and had never intended to harm James. She tried to persuade the detectives that their original plan had only been to stage an incident that would make it appear as though Catherine had attacked James. But when the situation intensified, everything had spiraled out of control. According to her, when the struggle began, she found herself on the sidelines, uncertain of what to do. Hale listened carefully, but he could tell that Lisa was still withholding something. He decided to conduct one final review of the case to reconstruct the entire sequence of events from that night. The detectives returned to the Watson home, carefully reviewing surveillance footage and re-examining the crime scene to ensure they had not overlooked anything. During the re-examination, forensic experts uncovered a small but significant clue on the shotgun that had previously gone unnoticed. A strand of hair was found beneath the stock and tests revealed it belonged to Catherine. This discovery gave Hale pause. Perhaps Catherine had held the gun either before or immediately after the shot was fired. It also explained why her account had been so confused. Maybe she genuinely could not remember how events had unfolded in those critical moments when emotions were intense. The detectives also reviewed Catherine's phone records from just before the shooting. They discovered that she had contacted the private investigator she had hired and arranged a meeting for the following day. This confirmed that she had serious intentions of confronting the situation and possibly holding James accountable for his infidelity. But if she had these plans, why had the situation escalated into a tragedy? Hale decided to revisit Catherine's statements. His aim was to determine whether she had been manipulated or if she had been involved in the conflict from the beginning. He began questioning her more firmly, but Catherine still maintained that she could not recall the precise details. She described how she and James had started arguing and how he had tried to take the envelope with the photographs from her. Everything had happened too quickly, and at some point, everything had simply gone dark. As the investigation progressed, detectives gained access to a security camera in the living room that they had initially missed. It turned out that James had installed the camera himself, providing an unexpected turn in the case. The footage showed Catherine and James arguing. Lisa did not appear on camera, but her voice could be heard. She was pleading with James to stop and saying they needed to resolve things peacefully. At one point, James tried to seize the envelope from Catherine's hands, and she pushed him away, triggering a physical struggle. The video showed Catherine losing control of the situation. James grabbed her wrists. And at that moment, Lisa ran into the room, attempting to separate them. She positioned herself between them, but somehow ended up holding the shotgun. It appeared that she intended to defuse the situation, but events did not unfold as planned. The video captured the critical moment when Lisa, in a state of panic, unintentionally aimed the shotgun at James in an attempt to frighten him. James made a sudden movement, and that was when the gun discharged. Catherine collapsed to the floor as Lisa stood frozen, the shotgun still in her hands. For several seconds, she stared at James, lying motionless on the ground. Her face twisted in sheer horror. Slowly, she lowered the shotgun and ran out of view. Catherine, trembling and in shock, slowly rose and frantically dialed emergency services, her voice unsteady and panicked. Detective Hale now understood what had happened. Lisa, caught in the middle of the escalating conflict, had fired the shot in a moment of overwhelming panic, likely not even realizing what she was doing. The plan that James and Lisa had devised to stage an attack and place the blame on Catherine had failed. When the situation reached its breaking point, Lisa, overcome by fear, lost control, and the tragedy became unavoidable. Hale decided to conclude the case by charging Lisa with involuntary manslaughter. She broke down in tears, insisting that she had never intended to cause harm, but the evidence was undeniable. The investigators recognized that although her actions had stemmed from panic, she had been aware that she was holding a firearm and could have chosen not to use it. When Catherine learned the full truth, she remained in shock. She realized that her sister had not only been a participant in the scheme, but the one whose actions had ultimately led to James' death. Despite her grief, Catherine agreed to cooperate with the investigation, providing all the necessary evidence to help the police bring the case to a conclusion. In the end, Lisa pleaded guilty in court and was sentenced to 6 years in prison for involuntary manslaughter and conspiracy to stage a crime. Catherine left Perth to begin a new life, determined to leave behind the tragic events that had permanently changed her family. The story ended far differently than any of its participants had intended. If you found this case fascinating, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We post crime case videos every night. Until next time, stay sharp, stay vigilant.